A crowd is gathering. As word gets out, more and more arrive until it becomes a mob. Many clench stones in their hands. Some grip them tightly. There's a cacophony of noise. As one voice rises, another picks up. Eventually, there's yelling, jeering, and catcalls. The outcome seems foreseeable. Someone is going to die a violent death today. Out before them all, a lone woman. Tears stream down her cheeks. She, too, is trying to get words in, but it's futile. Some shake fists. Others curse her. Still, others continue to grip a rock tightly in the palms of their hands. This woman is a lawbreaker, an adulteress. There is no question about her guilt, and under Levitical law, there is no question about her punishment. She is to die a painful, slow death by stoning. She's given up hope. There is no defense, and she knows her position. Guilty. Her legs give out from beneath her, and she waits for the inevitable. Now on her knees, she is just there waiting for the first stone to hit its mark. She hopes it's an accurate throw. A good blow to the head could render her unconscious and end the pain quickly. In the crowd, the heated debate continues. Among the members of the mob, there are even those who know this woman intimately. They too hold stones. It is far better to throw stones than to be stoned, they reason. Better to be a living hypocrite than a dead adulterer. Then, almost out of nowhere, a lone man appears. He takes up a position in the middle ground. She'd never seen him before, but she knew he must be important. When the crowd saw him, the screaming faded into muddled tones and eventually whispers. She heard a name repeated as word propagated among the people. Jesus. 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 She knew that name. Some called him Messiah. He had performed great miracles. He'd healed the sick and cast out unclean spirits. Some even said that he was the Son of the living God. What was he doing here? Surely he would pick up a rock as well and join this ad hoc death squad. She closed her eyes for several seconds now as her heart raced in her chest. Surely he was here to enforce the law, and death would come soon. But Jesus didn't pick up a rock. He never faced her at all. Instead, he stood silently, scanning the crowd. The silence was awkward. Finally, someone got the nerve to speak up. They yelled from amidst the sea of people, "Teacher, this woman was caught red-handed in the act of adultery. Moses in the law gives us orders to stone such persons. What do you say?" The silence was deafening. Jesus stood there for several more seconds without saying a word. Finally, he bent down and began writing with his finger in the sand. The crowd remained silent for as long as they could contain themselves. Slowly, people began whispering again. Then the noise level picked up further as they began badgering him. "Some Messiah you are! You just stand there writing in the sand!" However, there were a few who stood there with faces as white as a sheet. They were close enough to see what Jesus was writing. They dared not say it, but in their heads the thoughts spiraled. "He wrote my name!" The jeering continued for several minutes, but Jesus never even looked up. He wiped his hand through the sand to erase the last of his scrawling and stood up. Silence once again came over the people. Finally he spoke. "The sinless one among you, go first. Throw the first stone." He stood for several seconds longer, scanning their eyes, and then resumed his previous crouched position and began writing in the sand again. This adulteress finally worked up the nerve to open her eyes again. As she watched in confusion, people slowly began backing away from the crowd. Many walked away with their heads hung low. They dropped their rocks as they went. Still, this man continued writing. He never looked up. She was astonished as she watched the last few stragglers turn away. It wasn't until everyone had dissipated that he stood up once again. His eyes immediately met hers. In her shame, she couldn't bear to look upon him. She averted her eyes and lowered her head. What does he intend to do with me? I'm guilty, and the penalty is death. The silence only lasted for a few more seconds. Then he spoke. Woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you? She had seen her accusers as they'd slowly peeled away from the crowd and walked away. But she still couldn't believe her eyes. With disbelief, she responded to Jesus. No one, Master. Now he looked deeply into her eyes. It felt as though he could see her very soul. He held her gaze for what seemed like an eternity. The love in his eyes was unmistakable. She didn't feel ashamed, guilty, or soiled as she so often did. Finally, it was Jesus who broke the silence as he said to her, Neither do I. The story above originates from John chapter 8. I added to it the thoughts and emotions that I pictured taking place on that day. Regardless of whether I'm accurate or not, the facts remain. The woman was condemned for an offense that had a death warrant attached to it. It was Jesus, the very Son of God, who stepped in to stop it. Are you following me here? The Son of God stepped in to stop a woman from being stoned to death for breaking God's law. The people who gathered there to carry out this cruel execution were justified. She deserved death, but what she received was grace. Take a few minutes to consider this. Many believe that God sits on his throne waiting to dole out condemnation for our offenses. Yet Jesus proclaims that he came here to do the will of the Father. It's fair then to say that Jesus was demonstrating the grace of his Father. On top of that, Jesus knew the hearts and deeds of the mob. He knew who they were and what they had done. Many of them were likely adulterers as well. We have no way of truly knowing what Jesus wrote in the sand that day. But what if it was the names of those who had committed adultery with her? What if they became aware of what he knew and lost their taste for blood? The same applies to us today. People may readily condemn us for our mistakes, but God doesn't. While they line up with stones looking for blood, he draws a line in the sand. When we finally have the nerve to look up, we find that our accusers are gone and that only he remains. When he reveals himself and we look into his eyes, we can't help but notice his deep love for us. I close with one of my favorite verses. It comes from 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So I ask just one question. If you're like me, and you've run from God thinking that he stands condemning us, what reason do you have to run from him now that you know the truth?